Good afternoon, and thank you for joining today's webinar, Dynamics GP Tips and Tricks, Ease of Use with the Web Client. I'm Megan Turco, and I'll be your moderator today. Before we jump in, I'm going to briefly go over how to use your webinar console. The orange arrow on the right side of your screen will let you toggle the control tray open or closed. And at the bottom of that control tray, you'll see a chat window. Please feel free to submit your questions at any time throughout today's webinar via the chat function, and we will get to those as many as possible during our Q&A session towards the end of today's webinar. Also, for your audio settings, you should see an area labeled audio settings on your GoToWebinar console. If you're calling in through your telephone, please choose the Use Telephone option. Alternatively, if you're using your computer speakers, please select the Use Mic and Speakers option instead. I do want to note that today's webinar is being recorded. We'll send out the slides as well as a link to the on-demand recording of the webinar within about 48 hours. So definitely keep an eye out for that message if you are interested in accessing the webinar after today or sharing with any colleagues who weren't able to make it live. And with that, I would like to introduce today's presenters. First up, we have Steve Chapman, who is a senior account executive in Armanino's Dynamics GP practice. Steve works with new clients to help formulate system requirements and determine best fits for ERP applications. With 18 years of GP experience, he creates and presents all of the product demonstrations for our Dynamics GP team. And also definitely remember to check out the Armanino YouTube page. All of the many GP videos that Steve has created to showcase how users can get more out of GP are located there. We also have David Mahard with us today. With over 10 years of GP experience, David leads the Dynamics GP upgrade and installation team, as well as manages the support desk for several service lines here at Armanino, including our GP practice. He has great expertise in extracting information from GP and other databases into developing SSRS reports for customers and internal Armanino use. It's great to have you both with us here today. With that, I'm going to pass the presentation over to Steve to get us started.
Okay, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. What we're going to do is we're going to go over a few items about the new GP web client, and we're then going to look at the web client. So let's take a look at some of the items why you might want to choose the web client and what's involved in doing that. First of all, why would you ever want to use the web client? Well, there's a couple reasons, and these are pretty good reasons. Number one, it replaces the business portal. So if you've been using the business portal in the past, you will now be using the web client. So it's kind of a different mechanism, but basically it's still a web application as the business portal was and has direct access to the Dynamics GP data. But in order to use some of the functionality that was in the business portal, you'll now be using the web client. One of the big advantages from an IT perspective is that there is almost no footprint on the user's machine because they're going to access everything through a browser, so Internet Explorer or even Chrome. So that makes it nice from an IT perspective. They don't have to go around to individual machines to do an upgrade. It also offers simple access for employee self-service functionality, and we'll take a look at a couple of those. There's three main areas. One is in the project area. We've got expenses and timesheets. We've got payroll timesheets and HR functionality, and also purchase requisition. So we'll take a look at that. Another reason is that you can avoid additional costs for Citrix and terminal services if you choose the web client. There are a couple things that aren't in the web client, and frankly, a couple of them is probably a good thing. First of all, advanced financial analysis is not available in the web client, and if you're using a web client, this is an excellent time to stop using it because you won't have it available in a web client, and there are much better alternatives. Also, it does not include multidimensional analysis in the web client. Integration Manager is still in the product, the GP product, but it's not available through the web client, which is really fine. That works for most people. And then there's some ISV products or third parties that have not yet adopted the web client, but it's in the product timeline for most of these ISVs, and will be there soon. So these are some of the differences between the web client and the desktop client that I see. First of all, the web client has a more modern look. It's all within a browser, and it looks a little updated, more updated than maybe the client server piece that you're used to looking at. It also, from a navigational standpoint, it takes advantage of area pages. The traditional menu is not there, but I think this is a good thing because the area pages make it a lot easier to access GP and to get your work done. So I think that's a good thing. They've changed some of the ways the screens look. Basically, the screens look almost the same. They have the same elements on them, but some of the buttons at the bottom have moved to either a drop-down list or tabs within the screens, and we'll look at some examples of those. And then Smart List is kind of changed. It's kind of hidden a little bit. It's still there. It still has the same functionality, and we'll take a look at that as well, but it's a little different orientation than you may be used to in the desktop client. And then there's still a few very small, I would say it's 5% or less, system-related functionality that still requires the desktop client in order to perform those functions. But that's generally not a problem because usually there's just an admin person that's doing that, and you really only need one client, which we would recommend anyways. Browser compatibility is a big thing. Currently, on the current version, which is GP 2015 R2, the web client's only available on Internet Explorer and on Chrome. Now, in this 2016, the next release is going to be GP 2016. David will talk a little bit about that, but with that release, there's a couple things. First of all, Silverlight will not be needed, and that opens it up to a lot of other types of browsers. So this is kind of a good thing. People have browsers that they like. They're going to be able to access the web client through those browsers. All right, now let's take a look at a demonstration, and I think Brian's going to flip over to my screen here. There we go. Okay, first of all, this is the login to the web client. When you log in, you're logging into a URL provided by your IT department, and this is just within a browser. I have it expanded so it looks a little nicer. But this is just an Internet Explorer browser. You sign in, you have your credentials and your password, and then you sign in. Now I've already signed in, and let's just take a look at what it looks like. This is the home page. Now it should look really familiar to you. This is basically what the home page looks like in the desktop version. And you still have all the functionality that you have. You can move these items around if you want to. I can move those around. I can expand them if I want to. And I can pull all the other ones and I can move them around and make my desktop look basically the way that I want to. So that's kind of nice. That hasn't changed. Here, let me get this out of the way. There we go. And what I wanted to show you here was kind of some of the special things that are in the web client. One of them is, let's scroll down here, is the time cards. These time cards are available. Let's open that up. These are time cards into the payroll system, and you have the ability to enter time here as an employee. There's a time card that will come up here. So this allows me to enter time into the system. Here, this is just not working the way I want. Hold on. So here I partially entered some time. You can see some information. So this is a pretty typical web client entry form. It also, in the same area, gives me access to HR information. So what this allows me to do is update my own HR information, and it goes right into the GP HR system. So for example, if I had W-4 information, I could enter that here, and then I would submit it for approval and go through the approval process, and it would automatically update the HR record. So this makes it easy for people to update their personal information. And let's take a look at another app that is important to look at here, and this is the purchase requisition system. The purchase requisition system is available in the desktop client, but most of our users, most of our companies that are using this, they use the web client to extend this particular functionality. So let's just take a quick look at that. So this is the purchase requisition form, and I've got one here that I've already started, so let's just take a look at it. So here, what this allows me to do is put a purchase requisition together. I can have as many lines as I want to. I think I've got 2 lines here. And I can specify just a minimal amount of information. For example, if I just want office supplies, I don't know from whom I'm buying it or even how much they cost. I can put an estimate of the cost there. I can put, and that's really all I need, and then I can submit it for approval. And there's workflow on this particular requisition entry screen. So if I wanted to submit this, if I was ready to submit it for approval, I just hit submit, and it would invoke the regular workflow that's part of Dynamics GP now. So the workflow extends to the web client as well. All right, let's take a look at Smart List. I mentioned that Smart List was a little different, and let me show you where that is. They've hidden it away down in the administration area page, and in particular the reports. But we'll take a look at it just so you can see that it really hasn't changed very much at all. And it's down here in the reports area. Let me expand that. And you'll see that I got Smart List and also Smart List Designer down here. So let's open up Smart Lists. And let's just take a look at a simple one here. We'll look at vendors. So this is the Smart List that you're probably used to seeing in the vendor standpoint. But I've got all the functionality. I can add a column. Here I'll click on columns up here and add a column. It'll bring up a dialog box that allows me to choose from a number of different columns. I can just add a column. Just scroll down here and pick one. We'll add that in. And I can move it to the top. Hit OK, and it'll add that field into my report. And then I can use this to sort the whole item, sort the whole list, by that particular column if I want to. It also is still a way to navigate. So if I have a particular vendor I'm interested in this case, I can go to Go-To windows. I can look at the credit summary in this case. It's a particular window in GP. And I always like this one because it has a little agent down at the bottom, and I can drill down in the web client just as I can in the desktop client. I can drill down, click on amount there, and it'll open up all the transactions for that particular vendor. I can highlight a particular transaction I'm interested in, click on document number, and it will open up that particular document. So this is nice, again, because it's the same functionality that you're used to in the desktop client. And then also, I can export this to Excel, and it works a little differently in that, let me close these here, is I can take this list, I can export it to Excel by clicking on the Excel icon, and what it's going to do, it's going to load it onto my local hard drive. Okay, it's not going to open up Excel, but that's okay, because I can just save it, and then I can open up later if I want to. It's going to be a regular Excel spreadsheet, so I can just save it there. And it'll download the information and create the Excel spreadsheet. So that's a little different. Let's take a look at two particular transaction types. We'll take a look at the sales transaction entry. Let's go to the sales area page here by clicking on sales at the lower left-hand side. Brings up the sales area page here. Let's take a look at the sales transaction entry screen. I'll click on that. So here's what you start to see some differences. Basically, this is all the same as the screen is on the desktop, but let's take a look at a couple things. First of all, let me just scroll down here a little bit. Not that much. Hold on. Okay. So this is the sales transaction entry screen, and you notice a couple things. First of all, some of the buttons at the bottom are no longer there, and they've moved to the Go-To button here. If I go to the Go-To drop-down list here, let's take a look at a particular transaction first. If I go to the Go-To button, it'll give me those options, for example, like distributions and commissions and user defined. These are buttons that in the desktop version are down at the bottom. Then there's some other information, detail information for the particular line. So there's a customer detail entry here. This is a tab in the form. It opens up information about the particular customer. Right? This looks familiar to you. It's just in kind of a different place. Also, the item detail for the lines is available as a tab as well. So if I click on that tab here, it'll open up the item detail screen for that particular line. Okay. So let me look at another one. Look at the payables transaction screen here, and let's go back to the purchasing area page. Get rid of that. And let's open this up and look at the transaction entry screen here. Look at the transaction. So here's the payables transaction entry screen. This is a screen into which you would enter accounts payable invoices. And let's look at a couple things here. First of all, I have note functionality. I can add notes like I can in the desktop. I can add that note. I can copy and paste in there. I can also attach documents to this note if I want to. I can also drill down on the field labels that are underlined. So for example, this is the vendor ID. I can click on that, and I can go directly to the vendor maintenance screen. It'll pull that up. So I have basically the same functionality. It also has the ability to attach documents with the new document attach functionality. In the ribbon up here on that screen, I click on attach. It opens up the new document attach functionality, which allows me to add multiple, let me scroll down a little bit here, multiple to any particular record. So I can add a number of them here, just hit attach. It'll go out and pull any information I have that I want to attach to this particular document. In fact, we can just look at the item we just saved. Excel spreadsheet. I'll attach that. And there you go, it attaches to that document. So this is a nice functionality. It's in a couple of screens in Dynamics GP, and it's been added to this web client in these screens as well. So that's helpful. And I just wanted to show you one last thing, and that is the ability to have SSRS reports available on certain transaction screens. And they're under the ribbon here under the available reports. If I click on this, I had previously set up to run the age trial balance for vendors from the payables transaction entry screen. So this is functionality that is relatively new in that it attaches to specific screens in GP, but also uses SSRS reports here. It's starting SSRS right now to show me that report, and let's just see it come up here. And this is available in a number of screens within GP, and it's nice because you can decide which reports you want on there. You can have more than one. Let me just do this quick, start it off. So it gives users instant access to a report. They don't have to go to another site to look for that report or go to another menu within GP. They can launch it directly from the transaction there. So this is loading here, and this is the SSRS report for the aging, and I can drill down the detail and get the detailed version of this particular report. So this is handy. It gives people real access to data within GP all through the web client. So that's kind of what I wanted to show you in the web client now. I think you'll see that the functionality is almost identical to what's available in desktop client, but it does offer some advantages from a user standpoint in having a minimal footprint and being able to be used on a number of different devices. So I think you'll find that it's a pretty good way to look at Dynamics GP. So let's head back over to Brian, if you can take us back to the rest of the seminar.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate the view of the web client. It's a pretty nifty thing. One of the things that Steve did not mention, I just want to make sure that the viewership knows, is that it does enable single sign-on in ways that GP is not able to do. Because when you log into the web client, you're logging in via your Windows login, and so that tends to be pretty nifty. If you can, you don't have to create a specific GP user dedicated to this person. You can use their Windows login, and that can enable the single sign-on, so that you don't have to have a separate password for GP specifically. So that's pretty nifty. The other thing that's featured is when version 2016 comes out in June, HTML5 is going to be the root of this particular deployment. And so it's going to open up a whole lot of things. Where you'll be able to deploy GP Web Client through the Safari browser, for example. So for all of you Mac users out there or iPads, you'd be able to do it through Safari, and Firefox will be added to it too. So it's going to be some good stuff. Let's take a look at where GP is heading. One of the things that is pretty exciting is to determine, where we've been, where we've come. So we'll start off with GP 2013 and how we saw that. So GP 2013 was the first time that they introduced the web client as part of its core feature. And then GP 2013 R2 added to that, and it included workflow for the first time, and that was pretty nifty. It had also enabled then the Windows login for identity management, and then it introduced requisition management, which was a huge thing for a long time with GP. Of how do you request POs? You would typically have to buy a third-party product, and you technically don't have to do that now. You can do it through the core product at this point. Then in December of 2014, GP 2015 came out, and it introduced just a wonderful new environment, I think. It's very solid. We saw good productivity from the very, very beginning of it. It introduced a new feature called service-based architecture. Now, this is a behind-the-scenes thing, so it's sort of under the covers of everything, but it does enable developers to tie into GP much more tightly and much more easily. So it truly is not a front-end type of feature set, but it's a huge thing for the back end. It also improved upon the identity management, which is, again, the Windows login. And then it introduced a whole lot of new workflows, including payables batches and GL batches and different things where you can send those around for approval. For those of you who use Business Analyzer, you can now do it on iPads and different other devices that you couldn't do before. It used to be just sort of the Windows devices. Now you can do it on Mini. GP 2015 came out in about the June timeframe of this year, or last year, I should say now. And it introduced a few extra things. The all-in-one doc viewer was kind of a cool thing. This is currently available for vendors, so you can look at all their POs, all their received items, all their invoices, all the payments that have been made. You can see it all on one screen. So that was kind of a cool thing. It also introduced, for workflow, it introduced individual AP invoice approval, which was kind of nice. But where are we going to go after this? So GP 2016 is coming out. So GP 2016 is coming out in June. We expect about June of this year. Well, we don't know the exact date. We're fully anticipating June of this year, which is quite rapid, actually, but there's a distinct reason for that. Normally, GP releases things in a 2-year increment time frame. This one is a 1-year increment time frame because of the HTML browser. And it kind of makes sense if you think about it, because you don't want to release various versions of GP 2015 in terms of, which version are you on? Are you on the HTML5 version? Are you on the Silverlight version of the web client? And so by releasing GP 2016, it's distinctly different than the others. And so with GP 2016, you're going to be on the HTML5 web client. And there's going to be a lot more features. There's going to be more all-in-one doc viewers. We're expecting some sales doc viewers, which should be kind of cool. Then what's going to happen beyond that? So the second half of this year, they're going to probably release in the December timeframe GP 2016 R2. Now this will be kind of cool because they're introducing some business intelligence enhancements. So we're looking forward to that. Maybe we'll get some nice dashboards. That would be very nice. We hope to see web client evolution because In a release 1 of a version, you sort of wonder whether it's going to be there or not. So we anticipate that release 2 will be quite robust. Then what's beyond that? Well, we don't know exactly when the next full version will be released. It could be in 2017, but it might be 2018. But they're going to continue to enhance GP throughout the years. So we're very excited about the new functionality that's coming. As they introduce the web client, it is definitely going to be, with HTML5 in particular, it's going to be particularly exciting to see what the new clients are going to look like and whether you will deploy via the rich client or through the web client. And I think that the third parties are going to jump on board with that HTML5. So if you're thinking about upgrading anytime in the near future, let's chat about that for just a few minutes. The things to consider. Do you want to do, what third parties do you have is the big thing, and are they going to be compatible? So we need to check with those guys and find out whether they're going to work with the new version. Infrastructure requirements. GP 2015 requires SQL 2012 or 2014, and we're assuming that GP 2016 might require SQL 2014. And you will need additional servers if you deploy the web client. So that's a new feature that you have to think about. Customizations are another feature. Do you have anything that's truly customized to your environment? If it is, we'll have to look at it and find out whether it can be upgraded as well. Most customizations can. We just have to take some time and look very closely at them. The other thing is it time to move to the cloud? Are you tired of managing your infrastructure in-house? Do you want to move to the cloud, either at Azure or through another hosted environment such as ROSE ASP? Finally, we need to think about timing. Do you want to do it during a mid-month type thing or after a month-end close? We just want to get your timing down. So we'd want to consider those types of things. But it's pretty darn easy to figure out if these are going to work for you. So we encourage you to contact us so that we can help you get started.
Thanks, David. We actually do have a quick poll for our audience here today about that last point that David made in terms of timing, a little bit more of a broader sense. So when are you planning your next Dynamics GP upgrade? First half of 2016, second half of the year, or maybe it's next year or beyond that. We would love to get some feedback from you guys as our audience here. So we'll give everyone a few more moments to actually get that in. I do want to note we are running a little bit out of time on the Q&A side of things, but I do want to note while we're getting some of those questions answered, we did have a question about the lag on Steve's demo. I do want to make sure that everyone's aware. Steve is actually using a demo environment when he showed that to you, so it's not really a full-fledged GP system. So, and in addition to that, there is a bit of a lag between his system and our GoToWebinar system. So I wanted to make sure that everyone knows if you were watching it and you thought, hey, wow, the web client seems kind of slow, that's not really the case. In the real environment, your real web client won't have quite that much lag. So I did want to make sure that our audience was aware of that. So thank you for everyone who did vote. We will go ahead and close the poll and then move on to actually our final slide, I think, since we ran out of a bit of time here for the Q&A. If you do have any questions, definitely feel free to contact Steve or David directly. Their contact information is up on the screen here. And as David mentioned, if you have questions about the roadmap or what's right for you and your team, definitely reach out to David and he can help you with that. So thank you to our audience. Thank you, Steve and David, and we look forward to seeing you on our next Armanino webinar.